In my book Rising 2.0, there's a chapter on her called on Anna Chandy, who is a very esteemed legal luminary. Back then, she was advocating for the rights of women in marriages to say no. Nothing has changed. We are in 2025. So I think we start, boardrooms will happen, gender rights, pay gap, all that is there. But basic rights for a woman to walk safe in the streets, for a woman to be safe in her house, I think first we need to start tackling those.
I think what is important for us women to see gender in a way that you have to find yourself, as somebody mentioned, you have to find yourself, and you have to find the confidence in yourself.
In our mythology, in our ancient scriptures, our gender roles are actually equal. We don't have premium on parenting. We don't have any relationship which is about the male being the rescuer.
Pleasure to be here at the Max City Wow Value of Words. Just as a quick background, I think the way we'll do this session, it's of course on the politics of gender. And we will talk a little bit about, the most oft repeated problem in this country, which is gender participation, gender going up all the way, glass ceiling and everything like that. But I think more important is to touch upon this issue of politics of gender. And I'll tell you how we do it. I'll start maybe with a few minutes of what I believe is an important issue in this country. And then we'll get each of our panelists to introduce themselves and maybe give some opening comments on what they believe is valid. And this is a small group, so feel free to jump in at the end of that introductory round and say what you have in mind in terms of this topic. And then we'll play it as it goes. Just let's have fun. So just as a quick background, my life is divided neatly into three parts. One is big boards. I'm chairman of Honeywell in India, and then of course State Bank and the Hinduja Group. Apart from that, what I enjoy really doing is three large social ventures. One is an entity called Lighthouse Communities Foundation, which works primarily with slum youth across 15 cities in the country. The second is an entity called GTT Foundation, which works largely on women's entrepreneurship and women's skills. And the third is an entity which we're just building, which is going to work on e-commerce and getting women to participate and sell better across all countries in South Asia, which is part of a UN program that we're really working. So in this context, let me start with something that I didn't mention. I'm also on the board of an entity called Educate Girls. I don't know how many of you are aware of Educate Girls, set up by a brilliant woman called Safina Hussain. And today we are working across the tribal areas of Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Bihar. And the basic premise is that a lot of the girls who dropped out of school thanks to COVID never went back to school. Primarily because I think the father decided that the girl was too valuable in the fields or as an unpaid assistant to women of the house, and they just didn't encourage there. So our job is literally to go home to home in tribal areas, put children back into school, give them very engaging educational tools and toys to make that happen. And it's been a big success story. It's a massively funded organization. So one of the problems we don't have is fundraising. So I think that's been good. And move forward a little bit. And even if the girl does manage to finish school and she's maybe 16 years old or 18 years old, how does she get into a job? That's where Lighthouse comes in. So even in Pune, for instance, where we're working on a saturation model, we're getting both men and women, but primarily women, to come in and develop a sense of agency, because that agency or the aspiration to do work has been missing in a lot of senses. And then take them all the way to not only get a job, but also at least to make sure they stay in the job for 6 months. And that's been so far a very successful exercise. A lot of government partnerships and almost 32 corporate sector CSR funds coming through. So I think that's been nice. And the UN model, as I said, that we're just trying to figure out is how do we take our existing work with women's entrepreneurship, which is currently across 5 states, and make it a 5-country or a South Asia movement. So what I've noticed in the last maybe 15 years of doing this work is, and that's something that actually the last Nobel laureate in this area, Claudia Goldwyn, she's a Harvard professor and you should research her work. She came up with this interesting U-curve concept. Idea being that when the country is very, very, very underdeveloped, women are forced to work. So literally everybody is working. And you see it even among slum women, etc. A lot of people are working there. But as there is a certain level of progress, and if you think of the next 100 cities in India, you'll see that happening. Women are encouraged not to work because the husband is making enough money either in business or work, and the family thinks is, why should the bahu go to work at all? So they actually drop out of the workplace. But as you progress, as civilization gets more progressive, then you'll find that 85 to 90% is truly in Europe and the US actually work again. So this interesting U curve is what we're seeing in playing out of this kind. So I'll stop here by saying that look, we need to understand what inhibits women from getting to work, which is what I started off. What keeps them in the workplace, and what I said earlier, how do you ensure that they go all the way to the top if they want to go to top? So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my wonderful panel. And Ika, of course, Ika is a big corporate success story, now turned mythologist, and God knows what she does. So Ika, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ganesh. And all of this, what Ganesh did not mention is that Ganesh and Uma also have co-authored a book. It's called the Nari Shakti. It's actually a compilation of, and it's right there. Please buy it. Get your copies signed by Ganesh. So where we've actually compiled essays on the emergence of women and the gender narrative in India. I'm a contributor there as well. So please buy it. That's a plug. More importantly,
the second chapter.
yeah, at least by the second chapter. So that's in the capacity of being a contributing author to the book on Nari Shakti. But more importantly, here I also represent the Max City Valley of Words Lit Fest, of which I am one of the founding directors as well, of festival directors. And one of the reasons that we actually created this festival, and that's why this panel is important, is because this festival is about celebrating India. It's about the issues that engage us as a nation. So it's not a classic lit fest in that sense. And so therefore, actually, when we were discussing and curating the panel on gender, there was a lot of conversation about, really do we want to have a panel on gender, because we have Indian Navy as a collaborator, they're a partner, and we have a lot of sessions that are on geopolitics, economics, strategy. And so one of the reasons that I was very insistent we have this panel of ours also is because India is too important a nation to be homogeneously represented in any format whatsoever. Right. So, and therefore, I thought it's very useful for us. And that was why, I sort of pulled in Ganesh to say that the fact that we are 50% of the population as women, the fact that our representation in the workforce, and even more so in leadership roles and in board positions, and Romaji knows that better than most of us here, is an issue that needs to be addressed as much as our defense strategy and economic strategy and geopolitical strategies and what we do with China and our relationship with the US. And so therefore, that's the context in which we brought us all in. And very quickly about myself. So Ganesh spoke about the 3 acts of his life. I'm literally on my 3rd life. I've been a banker for the first decade of my life. I have been the CEO of one of India's largest skilling companies with Future Group and NSDC in my 2nd life. And I now run a wisdom organization, which is, like Ganesh says, I'm a mythologist and I do a lot of things there. But we actually work a lot with Indic wisdom, with our ancient wisdom, and we mine insights from our ancient wisdom. We truly believe that there's so much of civilizational memory and blood DNA that already resides in us, that we really need to seek solutions from within than running around like headless chicken. And honestly, the organization of this festival is just another step in that direction. But more importantly, I find that in these 3 lives, that first one, which was the dark ages, where I was this angry, young, resentful woman with a point to prove to the world and at war with the world, I realized that I was seriously at odds with my own gender identity. I was so busy trying to be a man, in a man's world, in complete denial of who I was, whether it's, and I'm not even saying whether it was gender identity. Gender was probably just the biggest part of that identity. But because I was at war with myself, therefore I was at war with the world. Therefore, I was trying to, because I didn't love myself or respect myself enough, I was hoping to get somebody else and you to love and respect me. And therefore, I would do anything that you wanted to challenge me into. And those were what I call the dark ages, because they were very angry, very hurtful, very resentful to me and those around me. And those around me are sitting there, my nearest and dearest ones, who will tell you that I was probably very angry with them then. And that was the first life. The second life, um, and I'm just saying this is how gender and our nurture and our national identities, both as women and men, play out. I think the second phase of my life, which is when I was working in the skilling space and the CEO of Future Sharp Skills. I think that was the life of the embrace. So from the dark ages to the life of exploration, which is where I really had the privilege to be able to dive deep into questions of gender identity, questions of identity. Why am I? Who am I? Why am I so desperate to prove my point to the world? Do I have a point with myself? What's the purpose? What do I really want to do? Etc. Etc. Just understanding myself. And that's when I realized that this war that I had with, about trying to be a man in a man's world was not about the world as much as it was the battle inside. And so that was that second life, and it allowed me to explore who I was, why I was, and I think I began to embrace the gender identity. And then of course I stepped into my third life, which is the life that I lead now, which is the life of Ekam. And honestly, I realized that when I gave up my war with myself on gender, on seeking validation and approval, on not existing not to prove a point to the world, but just having fun with myself. That's when I think I stepped into this third life. And today I actually just live a life of pure grace and gratitude and of passion and purpose. And the fact that I'm a woman or not a woman is, I've actually become very gender agnostic. So even when you speak to people who engage with me, I think I've actually grown out of gender. So there's a stage where I'm in denial of gender, which is the dark, angry, resentful stages. Then there's a stage where I'm embracing, learning, accepting, exploring my own gender. And that's a life of exploration, establishing yourself within the self. And then there's this life where I think I'm truly beyond gender, to move to a space where I'm human. And I'm actually beginning to so enjoy this space where I don't have to think of whether I'm a woman or a man, whether I'm successful or not successful, whether I'm corporate or an entrepreneur, but just be established in the self, right? So, and I think a lot of that comes from who we are within our civilizational context.
Kiran, over to you. And Kiran, of course, I think most of you know her and been an amazing journalist and then 17 books. Is that right? So what's your perspective on this, Kiran, having seen this happening?
Thank you so much, Ganesh, and thanks, Eka, for inviting me to the Max Fit City Wow Lit Fest. I got that right, did I? What's my perspective on this? I came prepared with something, and right now I think because we have corporate women here on the panel, so I'd like to bring in a different perspective. I've been a journalist. I also ran two social media campaigns, which ran for around 4 to 5 years. One was violence against women awareness. The other was child sexual abuse awareness. I've done two books which are women centric, Rising and Rising 2.0. Both were Rising was 30 women who changed India, Rising 2.0 is 20 more women who changed India. In the past month, we've had immense outrage over an inappropriate joke which was cracked by a comic. Something that was not very pleasant to listen to, something that was not even funny to begin with. The amount of outrage was so much that there were FIRs filed, people attacking him online, all sorts of things were happening. At the very same time this happened, a woman died in Chhattisgarh. A woman died because she was, I'm sorry, trigger warning for anybody sensitive. She was she was raped by her husband, let's say, put it straightforward. And so terribly that she died from the complications. Nothing in the newspapers, no outrage. The man walked free. Why does this happen? Because marital rape is not a crime in this country. Because once a woman is married and she's over 18, she has no consent, she has no agency. And this deterrence, this inability to take a stand on this issue despite all those who are advocating for this law to be brought in, the fact that our authorities aren't taking a stand on it, aren't bringing in laws to deter this, means that there are so many women who have been deprived of their agency. And I think this is a basic right, a basic tenet of being human, that you have the right to say no, which we are denying so many women out here. This man has walked free. The courts have set him free. There are no repercussions for him. But we are outraged about an inappropriate joke. But we are filing police complaints across the country, from Assam to Maharashtra to wherever. This, I feel in recent times is my biggest barometer of where women's rights in India stand. Of course, if we compare it to the US, where women have no agency even in terms of reproductive rights, we're still better than them. But the fact remains that this is equally bad. Back in the 1950s, in my book Rising 2.0, there's a chapter in her called on Anna Chandi, who is a very esteemed legal luminary. Back then, she was advocating for the rights of women in marriages to say no. Nothing has changed. We are in 2025. So I think we start, boardrooms will happen, gender rights, pay gap, all that is there. But basic rights for a woman to walk safe in the streets, for a woman to be safe in her house, I think first we need to start tackling those.
Awesome. No, I think that's such an important issue. And we'll come back to this. I think it's an important thing to put raised. Let's move to you, Sukhi. Sukhi, of course, I know since she was a baby and I was a young man. So it's like maybe many years at this point of tech. And I still remember the day when you joined Aptech just when I was leaving, and then we moved together to Zensar. So I guess there's a history to that. But I know you're doing a lot of interesting things beyond the corporate sector. Now, of course, you're doing a bunch of other stuff. So first tell us a little bit about what you do today, and then maybe your thoughts on over the years, right from IIM Bangalore to where you are today. What's been your view, if at all it's changing, on the place of women in the world and this hot potato called the politics of gender?
Thank you, Ganesh, and thank you to Value of Words, Max City, for having us here. It's a pleasure. Of course, like you said, I know you from the time I was a baby, and that still makes you, and you still look young. So there's a dichotomy there somewhere. We need to sort that out. So a little bit about me to tell where I am. An engineer, an MBA, a banker, standard path. Then decided to quit banking and join Zensar, part 2 of the standard path, set up a financial services vertical with them. Started consulting independently, and then moved on to say, okay, I want to do other things. So let me do and pursue farming, photography, and which I do photography professionally, design books. And then on to saying, I want to see what the social sector is all about, and working with various entities. So coming to, I'll come to the social sector, but before that, when does a child know that you're a girl? As a child, you think you're a child, right? You don't identify as a girl at all. I was 7 years old. I was the only child. And I heard my neighbor tell my mother saying, but ek ladka hona zaruri hai. And at that point in time, in my mental image was one boy, one girl, nice families I see around. So completion of some sort. And my mom turned around and told her, मेरे लिए ये लड़की 7 लड़कों के बराबर है. I felt something that day, that is the norm. Is this different? Is the norm ki ladka is more important? I think that first hint of there being a difference between a boy and girl was embedded in my head at that time. I don't think my parents ever let me feel anything different, because I was the first girl in my family to pursue engineering and MBA and, whatever else. But that was the first time I felt that. So over to now, I see women working very hard. What you said, Ganesh, that in the U curve, women work hard because they have no choice. They have to work because they're the only earning people in their families. And especially in some states, if you see in Maharashtra, rural Maharashtra, it's only the women who work who make the place, because the men are drunk and gambling and, womanizing. So they have no choice. And even then, after all that work, they have no agency, because their money is being taken by these men to go drink and gamble. So that, and that is a very hard space for them, but they can do with a little upliftment at each point in time, and which is what agencies and organizations that you have do. The social sector organizations that work with them, that I am working with, however, are represented by men. So there is an entire drive to say that where are these women on the boards of these organizations who will think like a woman? You should not have to, but you need someone to think like a woman to help them orient themselves. So I did a program called Women on Boards with ISDM and Governance Counts, to bring women onto the boards of the social sector organizations. You would be surprised to see how parched even advisory boards are. And these are not formal boards, these are advisory boards, but how parched they are of women who are sitting there. So that's about me. More stories as we go along. I'll hand over to Roma.
Well, it's an important point you're making, because even today I find in Bombay the same set of women are circulating across boards. And there are, to my mind, at least 3,000 women who got certified as independent directors, but they don't get a look in. So somewhere there's a conundrum there we have to solve. So Roma, how about you? Roma and I have, of course, been working together since 1992, I think. She was running one of our first centers in Aptech in Jamshedpur, and then, of course, moved to become the head of corporate communications. And today she's one of the legends of corporate communications in the country. So tell us your story and your view on this, Roma.
Thank you, Ganesh, and very happy to be here, invited for the Max City Valley of Words Wow Lit Fest. I must say that and acknowledge it. But thank you, Ganesh, for inviting me for this very important topic. It's very pertinent. While I have gone through a life, I think, which has been pretty, what should I say, easy as compared to all of y'all. Maybe that's my personality, and possibly that's the aura I created of my personality, which gave me the opportunity to grow in my career. Right from the fact that it's come full circle now, my philosophy has always been learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that I'm a student all my life. Maybe that comes from my mother, who was a teacher in Sindh, at a time when women were not allowed to step out to work. And she was one of those trendsetters who told her father that, no, I'd like to work. So he said, okay, I can allow you to teach. And she taught young Muslim girls who were in Parda at that time, young kids. And they were just not allowed. But she went out there and requested the parents that I would like to teach them. I would like to teach them maths and science, but I'd like to teach them history of Sindh. So she used to take them to the Indus Valley civilization, the ruins over there, teach them much more, bring humanities into their life, enrich their life. And I think that stayed in my mind when I heard from her these stories. And the other part was that we had a joint family. It was post-partition. While they shifted here to Bombay in 1945, it was then Bombay. So I can't relate to Mumbai as much. And I grew up here, went to the best school, went to the best college. Bombay University gave me everything that I needed, but I had something in me which wanted to work hard. So I went into Jain College and I saw that there's a lot of frivolous activities which are going on. So I told my parents that I'm going to shift to morning college. I'd like to work. And at the age of 18, I think I started, or 17, I started my career. I'll definitely even like to tell you my age. It's a story of 17 to 72. I'm 72 today. I thought I should tell you because I'm going to write a book on that. So I started very young in my professional career, but that really helped me understand culture, people, but they embraced me because I think I was young, I was possibly foolhardy, maybe I was open, vulnerable, seeing life as it came. I started as a sales girl in a emporium called Kairali Emporium. That was South, I was North. They just embraced me. I learned culture right there, and I learned how to embrace culture. And my parents had taught me about Sindh, Pakistan. So I was here, getting all and just absorbing like a blotting paper. And I think those kind of values that we got, the spiritual value from my father, because he used to write the Granth, he has translated the Granth into Sindhi. All these things possibly helped me gain that confidence and get on to the world of the corporate sector, went on to a small company called Shakti Insulated, a telephone operator over there. I was called an ugly duckling. I had buck teeth. And the admin manager said, "You're a very nice looking girl. Why don't you set your teeth right?" Which I did. And went to one of the dental colleges and set myself looking more presentable. But of course, that led me into another career of modeling and films and things like that. But that apart, I think what is important for us women to see gender in a way that you have to find yourself, as somebody mentioned, you have to find yourself, and you have to find the confidence in yourself. So here was this girl backbencher who wouldn't open her mouth, wouldn't want to speak, and the father just pushed her gently that now you get into a career where you have to speak. And that's what I did all my life because Ganesh put me into that spot. I was happily doing a nice marketing job. And then suddenly he said, "You have to do corporate communications." I said, "You must be joking. These media, I'm sorry, journalists will really eat me alive because I'll be so candid, straightforward, transparent, ethically straight." But he said, "You're a business manager, and I think you can manage this much better, and they will respect you for it." So thank you, Ganesh, for that confidence. That led to a very successful career as a communicator, strategic communicator with the Mahindra Group, with the Vedanta Group, right from auto to the minerals sector, which is a regulated sector. Did a lot of crisis communication there. There I learned more about the social sector, where I used to go into the interiors of Odisha, see how these men used to drink and rape women and not allow them to work, but saw the guts of these women who could work. And I supported those projects right in the interiors. I used to walk miles to, sit with them, eat with them, enjoy life with them. Those were the values I got when I was with Vedanta. In Mahindras, I learnt about the Nanikali, the girl child program, which Anand Mahindra had instituted. So these stayed in my memory as learnings. The unlearning came that now what? What next? I've retired twice over. I retired at the age of 69 from Vedanta. I mentored the young leadership in Vedanta. Priya Agarwal was mentored by me for 3 years, and now she's forging ahead with her focus on ESG. I think these are things which have given me the confidence that I should do my own. So I have in my mother's memory started the RB Foundation just to educate the non-profits why it's important to create their brand, why should they communicate better so that they can also fundraise and help more people. So that's the starting point of the RB Foundation. But more important, in the last 15 years that I worked with Vedanta, I got connected with disability sport. I met a hearing impaired cricketer who invited me to a cricket tournament in Dharamsala, and I saw what they did and the kind of talent. So today I'm their pro bono CEO. I look after them. In fact, I'm leaving for the tournament now in a couple of days. So I was telling Ganesh, this day is fine. I leave for Delhi again. Yesterday I was in Delhi because I was being inducted into the Hall of Fame by one of the media agencies because of my 30 years being a communicator. But I think I do owe this, what I've got as a career pivot to Ganesh. So I must give him a big hand that he decided that she can do communications while I didn't have the confidence in myself. But I guess that's where it started. So I'm very happy to be here to see that politics and gender is not just about us or any of us only. It's a world outside that I've seen. I've lived in Oslo. I've lived in Scandinavian countries. I've worked there. I've seen the equality and the inequality there as well. It's not surprising to see how some of the society there is just like us. So don't forget that they are the Western world and they probably are much more equal than us. I think we are quite liberated here as compared to many other countries that I have visited. And that was my learning. So I think I'll stop at that and we'll continue further.
Thank you, Roma, for that. And I promise I didn't pay Roma to say what she said. But let me get let me see the voices of some men in this But important to get a perspective. And I'll preface it with what I'm saying. And having lived in Europe and the US, it never strikes me to ask a woman her age when she comes for an interview or whether she's married or whatever. Plus, how is that affecting her job? I know that what I won't say the time because you'll know who I'm going to talk about there. But very bright woman, must be in her mid 30s, and you were all set to offer her a job, and she was extremely bright. I took her to meet my boss, the chairman of the board, and the first question he asked her was, "Are you married?" And then not only she say, "I'm not married," but then he started going, "Why are you not married?" Oh my God. So I was like, turning my head away saying, "Oh my God, if he had asked this to an American woman, God knows what would have happened." Similar. I mean, my wife is a very, very successful career maker in her own right. So even today, when we very good friends, and I'm not saying they do it in any bad intent, the next thing they'll say, "Oh, we're having a dinner at home next Saturday. Will you please bring Uma along with you?" And I know my wife will immediately say, "No, what do you bring Uma along with?" So let us dive a little deeper into this and start with history. So, Eka, if I may ask you, I mean, we are all of us have learned to watch TV serials and maybe read the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, etc. And today I believe there are newer and newer versions of that coming through, cases to a certain point of view. But if you look at, I mean, what everybody grows up with, Ram, the ultimate perfect human being. And then we talk about the Agni Pariksha thing, which I believe is being rewritten at this point of time. Yes. And if you look at the Mahabharata, for instance, where you have this amazing story of the Draupadi Vastrahara. In fact, we just did a spoof on it in our college event, in our corporate event a week back. And everybody was on tenterhooks saying, "Oh my God, can we really do a spoof on anything?" So we changed all the names to make it politically correct. So is this all conditioning our minds in something that, look, there is always a story of a woman going through not as macabre a incident that you mentioned, but is there something in mythology which is conditioning men and women?
Thank you so much for this because I've been hearing the inputs that came in, and that's when I realized that. So we're actually working on a book right now, which comes out later this year. It's called Goddess in the Boardroom, and it really is Asia and our part of the world. It's our response on lean in, where our narrative is that, look, the fact is that in the West, and Ganesh, to your point, in the West there is no context or archetype of the woman in power, of the woman in leadership roles. So in Europe, you submit to the parental power. The premium on gender is on parenting roles. So you're relevant, which is why the whole premium on big bust, wide hips, fertility, parenting, nurture. In the New West, which is the Americas, the gender roles are actually about the damsel in distress and the knight in shining armor. Right? So you could, therefore, the female archetypes are of the mother, the maiden, and the harlot. So you could actually be the mother of God, but you still need to be Virgin Mary. So that's how the theme plays out of like I said, the damsel in distress and the knight in shining armor. In our part of the world, it's fascinating. And that's when I went back to study, because I realized that, and going back to that journey, and I'll just use that as a reference point, that as a woman, I had ticked every single tick mark of the male world. I had fabulous schooling, great privilege, university, MBA, banking career and job, batchmate husband, hot batchmate husband, daughters, met every poster tick mark there was, and yet I was unhappy within. And because I couldn't embrace myself, it was easy to place it on gender. I'm not happy because I'm the woman and I must be therefore discriminated against. And that's when I went back and actually looked at, Ganesh, exactly this question, कि हमारे यहाँ की gender roles है क्या? And it's fascinating because uh, in our mythology, in our ancient scriptures, our gender roles are actually equal. We don't have premium on parenting. मतलब parent के नाम पे you can have a cow, tree, mother, river, grass, stone, ghada. Anybody can be a mother, right? You don't need to be a woman to be a mother. We don't have any relationship which is about the male being the rescuer. In fact, more often than not, it's the woman who's the rescuer. The only thing that we actually place a premium on, or the male-female relationship as represented in our mythology, in our texts, scriptures, etc., has always been that of partnership. Very independent agency and very independent partnership. So whether it's our gods and goddesses, whether it's the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and why it's very fascinating, I'll just use a very interesting story to bring this out. So my mother and I have actually just co-authored a book on the Panchakanya. So the Panchakanya are Ahalya, Draupadi, Kunti, Tara, Mandodari. These are all 5 women who have had, not only are they not virgins, they're called Panchakanya. So not only are they not virgins, but they've all had more than one relationship. I'll just use Ahalya to bring out this whole context bit. So the Ahalya story, bare bones fact is that Ahalya was the first woman on earth, extremely beautiful. Brahma gifted her to sage Gautam. Gautam raised her, and after he raised her, he brought her back to Brahma and said, when she reached puberty, and said, okay, here I've raised her. Brahma, very pleased with the raising of Ahalya, said, okay, very good, you've raised her well, now you can have her for your wife. So Gautam says, okay. Indra, on the other hand, is very outraged by the fact that here's the prettiest creature on earth, she needs to be mine. Gautam and Ahalya have a long life, they have a son, they raise an ashram together. And then now here's when the story gets fuddled. And so bare bones, Indra comes into Ahalya at some point of time in the morning. Their relationship is consummated. Gautam finds out, comes back. She's cursed to become a stone. And Ram then redeems her. This is bare bones. Now, that's how the narrative shifts. In the Rig Veda, this story of Ahalya and Indra is this wonderful story where Indra comes to Ahalya and seduces her. And it's an incredibly beautiful seduction scene between Indra and Ahalya where he says, I will have you. And thus they consummate their relationship. Gautam comes back. Ahalya goes to Gautam and says, you have fulfilled me as a daughter, a mother, a wife, but now I have known fulfillment as a woman. And having thus been fulfilled, I withdraw my senses and engagement for the world. I don't need to experience anything else. And therefore, it's that turning to the unfeeling stone. Right? So that's the Rigvedic version where there's absolute agency, where she controls her narrative. As society evolved, by the time we've reached Valmiki and Ramayana, because by now our social structures have become more male dominated, in the Valmiki Ramayana, this scene changes to Indra deceiving Ahalya, comes in the guise of Gautam, and Gautam thus comes back and says, Gautam is upset, and therefore Gautam curses Ahalya to become the stone and curses Indra with 500 other curses that need to happen. Because by now he's the husband owner. Come to 2000 later and Tulsidas, and by the time we are at Manas, by this time the narrative is about the alpha male in power. By now we are parochial, patriarchal, and social norms have changed. So by this time, Indra has raped Ahalya. And because she's Gautam's property and Gautam comes back, Ahalya is cursed to be stoned, and Indra is cursed with like one of the most hideous, obnoxious curses that you can have, that you will have 1,000 vulva over your eyes, over your body, and things like that. Okay, so the narrative, Ganesh, and the reason I mention this and bring out the story is to say that the narrative of the gender relationship and the power dynamics has actually evolved as our social order evolved. But if you go back to the origin and think about it, we have the world's largest living cults on the feminine divinity. We have 18 days where we only celebrate the feminine divine. We celebrate the feminine divine, and it doesn't mean celebrate the female, but the principles of the female in Navdurga, in Ashtalakshmi, in knowledge and Saraswati. We celebrate, we have something called the Dasha Mahavidyas, where, by the way, there's no physicality to this at all. So the Dasha Mahavidyas, there's one who's a widow and old and haggard. There is one who's young and pretty. There is one who looks like a crane. We have celebrated all forms of femininity. We have the Chaucer yoginis, the Panchakanya, the Panchasati. So we, in our most primal, visceral, like I said, the civilizational memory and the blood DNA, we have celebrated the concept of femininity as equal. We say that, quite like Jung and the anima and the animus, these are not about physical representations, but the qualities inside of you. We have the Ardha Nareshwara.
Phrase what you're saying, Eka, by saying that, look,
we can't blame history or mythology for who we are. So if there is a
Yeah.
problem today of women's participation, if there's a problem exactly what she said about, almost perceiving as males and females that look, there is a certain place in the home for what men will do and what women will do.
Yes.
We have only ourselves to blame and we can't look back on history.
Ourselves in recent times. And recent times. So maybe we need to reclaim our narrative and not change our narrative. So I love that bit that Romaji said about, learning, unlearning and relearning. So maybe it's time we relearned ourselves, unlearning the recent past and stepped into our civilization.
So let me ask each one of you just one quick question each. So Roma, I'll tell you a story. But both you and I grew up in the most prosperous state in the country, which is Bihar, of course. You all know what prosperity is. But I have a very young friend, and I'll name her, but she's one of the co-authors in our book, called Nikki Barua. Nikki grew up in Assam, okay, very much not even in Guwahati, but near Guwahati. And like many other people growing up in very small towns, she grew up like a very typical Indian girl. Then she went off to the US, became a very successful entrepreneur, met an amazing Mexican woman called Monica Marquez. And I remember meeting Nikki just before, I think just after she met Monica. And she said, look, I'm going to get married next year. You got to come for the wedding. So like any stupid Indian, I asked, who's the lucky man? So she said, no, I'm married Monica Marquez. So I said, oh, so it shows you mentally we're still not there. So, and I asked her, are your parents coming? She said, absolutely, they're coming from Assam just for the wedding. And I actually went for the wedding. It was very wonderful. Okay, to see that happening. And today this woman has an amazing social media site called Beyond Barriers. And they're actually helping women across America and Europe to find themselves and express their own agency. So very interesting. So question to you, Roma, is having worked in the East, in the West, in small towns, and now in Mumbai for many years, do you see a fundamental difference in the way women think, or even men think for that matter, in small town India and large city India?
No, but Ganesh, you'd be surprised that in small town India, and I've seen the kind of equality between the men and women. It's very surprising. I would find some of the urban men being a little more, into patriarchy because that is what they've seen with their parents, but not so in the interiors. I have stayed in Jamshedpur. I have stayed in places where I've traveled in the interiors, like you said, Bihar, Orissa. I've lived in Bangalore, so that's another urban city. So when I see all this, I see that men in the interiors of India, because they are very educated also. A lot of, I would say, a lot depends on the kind of education, which is not just the university degrees. Let me clarify that. It is how they've been brought up, and strong women have brought them up. Very strong women have brought them up, and I've seen the way they have a sense of equality with women, a sense of respect for women. So I have never seen that gender inequality in the kind of circle and society that I lived in. But yes, there is so much more when you go into the interiors, when you see rape, when you see men drinking and just lying around in the fields, and the women working hard. That I think is something we have to improve on. We need to help. We need to educate. I think if we start educating, then it comes by itself. It's not that you can force this kind of culture onto them, because in India we have different cultures. We respect all the cultures, and we are all proud Indians. There is no way that I'm going to ever kind of compromise on my being a proud Indian, even when I was in Norway. And everybody used to tell me, but you must be cooking the whole day, lunch, dinner. I said, hang on, I'm working here. I'm working for Aptech actually. I've got them the largest LMS order in a place where I knew nothing about. I go into that office. The fellow sits across me and says, but how are you going to give a presentation? And you're just dressed like us. You're very exotic. That's what he told me. Young Scandinavian, never stepped out. And he asked me that, do you have lions on the road? Do you have elephants, snakes? I said, where are you? And I just kept quiet. Mildly, I took him through the Aptech presentation. I still remember. And Nilesh was working with me at that time. And when I said this to Nilesh, I said, this is the first world country, and this is what I hear over there. They were just kind of And we had, lucky for me, Gopal Krishna Gandhi was the then ambassador, and we changed the whole narrative of India. We went out there and we changed the narrative. We said, you can't be just saying that we are in some third world country and we are proud of our culture. We are a knowledge economy, and please understand that we are more than equal. So both between Mr. Gandhi and me, we were staunch warriors who would take that forward. So Ganesh, it's both.
No, I think that's good. And so segue to Kiran. Kiran, you meant the story you mentioned, I'm still thinking about. I mean, just to bring it closer to home, our own maid who worked for us in Pune for the last 20 years. If you look at her story, very typical of many, many young Maharashtrian women who got married very early, husband turned drunkard, beat her up multiple times. She put up with all that. Then finally she dumped, brought up her daughter and son, and they're doing very well at this point in time. But even today, once in 3 months, the drunk husband will show up at home and she will give him lots of money. So I know why I'm asking her that, why on earth would you do this? I mean, when this guy has treated you so badly, but somewhere there is this thing that I'm responsible for him. So do you see this as a bug which will never let society progress in this country, or is it good for the men?
It is definitely good for the man. He's getting his money. So after doing all the beating and the drinking and everything, he's still getting the money. So definitely good for him. Whether it is a bug, I don't know whether it is a bug or an internalized, as a lot of the women here have been saying, that it's something that you've been conditioned to defer to the man while you've been growing up. That entire thing that you will listen to them because they know better. And even if they've not treated you right, you are in some way responsible for them, because Pati Parmeshwar and all that comes into being. I have a maid, my house help at home. Another tragic story. Son with polio, 2 daughters, young daughters, husband, such a drunkard, he's gone on to dialysis, stomach accident, doesn't work, nothing. This woman takes on extra jobs and she does his treatment and she does everything. And some days I say, why are you doing it? Just send him off to his parents' place. She says, no, I'm responsible for him. He's my husband. So there's this fatalistic thought that I wonder whether this generation of women will get rid of. But no, I see the next generation of women being very strong and positive. I have great hopes for these young girls. Oishi, I have great hopes from your generation. I see my son's girlfriend not tolerating shit. I mean, if I see him doing any shit, I will not tolerate it. But if stuff that I don't see, she's not tolerating anything. And I don't think any of the young girls today are going to tolerate a drunk husband taking the life's earnings from them, because they are earning their money and they're keeping it. And they're very clear about, this is mine, this is yours, whatever. And whatever internalization our generation has had, I think we are also outgrowing it to a certain extent. I think our generation is also saying that, okay, fine, what do we actually need a man for?
Yeah.
Is it companionship? Is it protection? Is it financial security? Can we give all of this to ourselves? And what do we need a man for? So there are a lot of questions that our generation is also asking ourselves and reprogramming ourselves. And I think at the end of the day, well, we are in a good space right now, and I am completely aware that I speak from a place of privilege, as all of us in the room do. I think the women who come from a very disadvantaged background are also very getting clear about this, because they know more about the rules and the laws, and how they can save their money and how they can file police complaint and get whatever they need from the laws than we do. If tomorrow I have to, advise somebody on any aspect of the law, I will not know. But these women will tell me that, you can go there and you can do this and this is your right. So I think things are changing to a certain extent.
I hope it does, Kirat, because my concern is I was talking to a young woman in Pali, Rajasthan, one of the tribal areas of educated girls. And when you talk to her, you worry that nothing has changed. Because her ambition is, I've shadi karni hai, maybe I'll wait till 18, maybe I'll not. And then I will be with my husband, I will take care of him, he will take care of me. So I'm hoping that women assert their rights as they go along. But let's see how it's.
Education at the end of the day.
Suki, question to you, just as a quick background. Suki and I both moved to this company, the last company where I worked full time, Zensar, together. And that was because I've been chasing Suki to work for me since her early days in IIM Bangalore. And she refused for 12 years. And then finally she called out. Finally, she called me up one day and said, okay, baby, I'm at consider now. I'd already resigned from Aptech. I hadn't told her that, but she joined up. So when I moved to ZSR, I think I felt obliged to her to tell the board that, look, I'll join you guys, but this young woman will come with me. So there was a few eyebrows raised, but
Yeah.
wanted me at any cost. So they said, okay. So I remember Suki and I once walked into the first top management meeting of the company. And here she was, bright young woman, and this room full of men. And I mean, they were all wondering what's going on here. So it's just so much the mainstream. And if you remember, Suki, when we walked in, out of the 20 people in senior management, there was one woman in that organization. That was this company secretary. And the company secretary, after 2 years, I think she went back home one night and her mother-in-law told her that, look, your son got 97 in his math exam. If you had only been a stay-at-home like all good daughters-in-law, you'd have got 99. And she quit the next day. Can you believe it? So I then took it upon myself that, look, we have to. So we started a movement called Women for Excellence. Got an absolutely wonderful young woman called Pramila Kaliwade leader. And the good news is when I left Zensar in 2016, out of 18 people in senior management, 13 were women and 5 men. If we extend that the men were asking for a men for excellence group, then they would not feel marginalized and left out. So you've been in the corporate sector, Suri. So at what stage do women assert themselves? Do they need the help of men like I did for Zensar to really make it happen? Or like the ICICIs and the Lalita Guptas of the world, can women make it happen for themselves?
Okay, Ganesh, for one, you were largely an anomaly in a world which is still very largely filled with manels and not panels because they're all male dominated, including the ones where they're talking about women. So you really were an anomaly where you brought in women at every stage to work and to participate, and you looked at what you said was caliber and capacity and capability and not through the lens of gender. And there were very few like that. So let me tell you, when I joined the bank after instead of Haptech, when I joined from my campus, 8 people were selected, and out of that 5 were women. And till now, till the last year when I met this batch, the entire bank which no longer exists, people asked, are you that batch? Because more important than the fact that you were sort of joining the bank, it was that 5 women. So everything gets looked at from the lens of gender. And I think even in senior management, this whole thing of what plays out. Will she have children? Will she need to take a break for her children's education? Will she go off? The children are writing board exams. Can she, so women need to prove themselves at every point in time. Prime ministers need to bring their babies to, and breastfeed them in front of TV to say that, yes, I am very, very capable of managing a job. Until you have a stage where you're saying, nahi, ye mandatory hai that you must have 50%, 30%, 40%, whatever number of women that at a senior level, it's very hard because it's such a nice, easy boys club, right? That you can keep bringing in enough boys. 50% of the population, or maybe 49 because of sort of infanticide, is women in the country, but you don't feel that equality, especially at senior levels. And you don't have women clubs, right? You have just old boy networks, boys. There is such limited number of groups of women. One very powerful group that I see is a women's group that I'm in. All IIM grads are members of that. But those are absolutely a unique thing. There are boys' networks all over, but women are not sort of, getting together. But women need the men to help them out in that. You need the fathers who believe. You need the brothers who believe. You need the husbands who believe. You need the sons who believe. So it's not a battle that only women will fight, and it's not a battle that will sort of be fought against the men. It's a battle to be fought with the men together. And that's the only thing. Because I know that when my second daughter was born, the nurses commiserated with the husband, saying, koi baat nahi, you poor thing. He was so offended by that he said, I'll double what I gave the last time as bakshish because I'm so happy to have a second daughter. It's my, dream fulfilled. When I got married, my father-in-law said, my daughter in Bombay, I'm not going to ever call you a daughter-in-law because it sounds like a very legal term. So you need these people to empower you, to make you, to keep you that equal. You can't I think women can lean onto each other and all that, but can't do it alone.
It's a very important one. I'm going to come back to the audience and many other questions before we conclude. But I mean, I'll just give you an example of my own daughter. She studied 9.5 years in Cambridge, in UK, then did a postdoc in Harvard Medical, and then Sloan Kettering for the last 8 years. And when she joined Sloan Kettering as a young cancer scientist, I mean, she was an unknown, because Sloan Kettering is in New York, very Jewish American kind of place. And she was young, she was black or brown, whatever you call it, and she was female. So a young female black was seen as a wow. And I remember 6 years back when I went to New York, her face was on all the hoardings of Manhattan. She was the poster child of Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Now she is dangerously successful. She was just last year rated as the best metastatic young researcher in the world. Now she is bearing the brunt of that success. Now the same community which adored her and put her on posters everywhere is saying, oh my God, is this young? Not so young. Brown, now US citizen, in woman, go to eat a lunch. Yeah. But I'm saying it's not changing anywhere. I mean, it's not like we feel that the US is much better, Europe is much better. It's still a fight. It's still an upwards battle, and I think women have to more than hold their own to be successful.